We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today, How to Build Your Strategic Portfolio Management Maturity. Today's webinar is hosted by Keyed In and featuring Forrester presenter today. So excited for everything we have lined up. Just a couple of housekeeping items to get us started. The webinar is a 1-hour presentation. 40 minutes of that is going to be content presented by Margo here at Forrester, and then we will save 10-15 minutes of question and answer period. So if you do have questions that come up along the way, feel free to stick them into the Q&A box or the chat box. We will be monitoring both, and we will get to those during the question and answer portion of today's presentation. All lines are on mute, you may have noticed already, so if you have any questions, you will need to stick them into the Q&A box if you want them answered, because there is no option to go off of mute. The webinar is being recorded. We get asked this a lot. The webinar is being recorded, so if you want to watch it again, if you want to pass it on to your colleagues, there is a recording happening today, and we will share the slides and the recording for anybody that registered for the event. Again, you will get them in your inbox within a day or so, and if you want to pass them on to anybody, you will have them. Do what you please with them. So again, expect that within the next 24 hours, you will get the slides and the recording, so don't feel like you have to take notes or anything like that. It will be coming your way within the next couple days. Another thing that I actually wanted to mention while we're on here is a lot of people want PDU credits for the content today, and Keyed In is not a registered education provider with PMI, but oftentimes our content does qualify for credits. So if you just submit it to PMI under self-directed learning, they will typically accept the content, but we don't have a credit number or category listing within PMI, so just submit it as self-directed credits. And one other thing I will warn everybody about, we do have some polling questions within the event today, so keep an eye out for those. The more participation in the polls, the better the responses, the more helpful they are for us. So if you could pay attention when the polling comes up and submit your answers, that would be super helpful. Just as a heads up, we can't see the individual responses, so don't be shy about it. And we just kind of see the aggregate and let everyone see the percentage of the total. So when you see those, you will know what to do. And with that, I will introduce Margo Visitacion over at Forrester Research. She is the analyst over there, and she will be presenting our strategic portfolio management maturity today. Welcome, Margo. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to focus on how to build your strategic portfolio management maturity. I'm a vice president and principal analyst with Forrester. Just recently had my work anniversary there, and depending on how you add the math for my first and second tenure, I've been there either 19 or 20 years. So either or works for me. So thank you, everyone, and let's jump right in. Strategic portfolio management is I think most everybody is familiar with the term project portfolio management. And at Forrester, we've actually shifted our coverage to strategic portfolio management over the last several years, because as organizations are going through their agile transformations and moving from individual project-based planning to more integrated product-oriented planning, service planning, application portfolio management, we recognize that project portfolio management just doesn't sufficiently cover what organizations need when it comes to getting insight into all of the demand and for work investment excuse me, and resource strategy. And please bear with me, recovering from a cold, so I will try my best not to cough my way through this. But in recognizing that PPM just isn't broad enough to really encompass all that an organization needs to understand the demand for change and their ability to respond to that change. So we renamed the category strategic portfolio management, because really, why are you as a company or as an organization, why are you focusing on this analysis, and why are you trying to juggle all the different demands for work, but to help your organization achieve the strategic outcomes that help it grow and better serve their customers. So let's open up with the state of customer-obsessed organizations, because that's the other element. It's not just Agile. I mean, one of the tenets of Agile, obviously, is putting the customer at the center of your strategy. So let's look at where companies are in making that transformation from being product-focused to being customer-focused or customer-obsessed. When we look at business and technology adoption priorities, we ask organizations what's most important to them. And what we see is that for 2019, it's been growing revenue, reducing costs, and improving the experience of our customers. When we ask business and technology decision makers on what do they feel are their priorities, what we see is, and this is a very good thing, is that they agree on their top 5 priorities for 2019, and that's increasing security and privacy, increasing the use of cloud, improving data and analytics technology, upgrade or replacing legacy business applications and systems, and that means moving into modern technology, especially in the cloud, and investing in the digital experience technologies. Now, it's interesting to see that the percentage of priority is higher on the tech leader side than on the business leader side, and not unusual, because the tech leaders obviously have more insight into what actually goes into achieving those priorities. But at least, as compared to previous years, we are seeing that business and tech are now aligned on what's important. And then we drive a little bit deeper into the priorities and challenges for digital and software leaders, just to see from a perspective of digital transformation. We know growing revenue is important for any private sector company. We know that improving the customer experience of improving the customer experience of their customers is a priority. Well, how do they actually achieve those business priorities within their particular expertise? So we asked digital leaders, and 41% of them said that they wanted to improve IT systems to support new digital technologies, and 30% want to create more smart and digitally aware connected products and services. So if you're thinking Internet of Things, Alexa-driven, talk-driven technologies, smart products, yes, that's exactly where they're focusing. Only 28% want to define clear and quantifiable. My finger got ahead of me. Only want to define clear and quantifiable metrics for measuring the success of their digital strategy. That to me is a bit low and a little worrisome, because I think you really need to focus on what outcomes you want to achieve to be truly successful. When we ask the same of software leaders, 30% of them, what are your challenges, of software leaders? 30% of them cited that budget was their biggest software challenge. And we'll see how that really impacts organizations going forward. And 28% note that their current systems are too inflexible. So I think what we're seeing here is sort of a melange of priorities and challenges. Everybody knows we need to change to move forward. We know we need to leverage more flexible technologies. We sort of know we need to measure it better. We know we need to change the way that we fund initiatives in order to be more flexible, and we need to make our systems more flexible. All of this here clearly indicates that we need to get a handle on what we're currently investing in, what we want to be investing in going forward, and most importantly, how are we using our key resource, our people, in the most effective way possible. So one of the first areas where you need to sort of draw an X in the sand to say where's an element of change is how you fund initiatives. And what we see is that today, software budget distribution is still a challenge. When in 2018, approximately what percentage of your software spending will go to new initiatives? We asked them, how are they dividing their spending between ongoing, keep the business running, ongoing, keep the lights on, keep the business running, and new innovative investments. What we see is a majority, 57%, are focused on either new software license for existing applications or ongoing software and maintenance support of existing solutions. So 57% is spent on just keep the lights on. 20% is spent on new subscription fees for new SaaS products. And 23%, only 23%, is being dedicated to new custom developed software solutions. So while 43% is going for something new, only 23% of that is really going toward new in-house innovative. 20% is expanding and modernizing, but the bulk of spending is still spent on just keeping the lights on. Let's add into this mix that, we're still used to doing things a certain way. External changes that are impacting senior leadership. We're seeing that today CEOs are starting to signal caution. The PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, does an annual global CEO survey. And when in 2018, they asked CEOs, about their attitudes in growth and technology. And as you can see, they were pretty confident, 52%, very confident in revenue growth, 95% planned organic growth in their organization. That's very aggressive. 69% planned merger and acquisition, 59% cost reduction, not unusual, but actually not as high as typical. And only 12% planned to outsource everything. But when they returned it for 2019, we saw a very different picture. 32% extremely concerned about the availability of qualified workers, 46% somewhat concerned. So they recognize that there's a real talent shortage out there. Only 35% confident of revenue growth, down from 52% the previous year. 29% believe that global growth, say that 5 times fast, global growth will decline versus only 5% thinking that in 2018. So it's a much more pessimistic picture. And 41% of CEOs are no longer seeing U.S., or 41% decrease in CEOs believe that U.S. is the top growth market. So 41% less believe that U.S. is the top growth market. And if you're going to ask the question, they actually are starting to believe that Australia, New Zealand is going to be on a faster growth rate, not larger, but on a faster growth rate. So things are changing and churning out in the world. So that means even more that you have to be have great transparency and visibility into what your organization wants to do, what they're able to do, and how well you execute on it. And that is where you need strategic portfolio management. And I think one of the, what Forrester believes is the way to succeed in the world of digital business and the world of this business transformation that we're going to is to focus on the customer-oriented or customer-obsessed operating model. And what we believe is that by putting the customer in the center of your strategy takes you from being product and service-oriented or customer-aware to being customer-led. It also allows you from being data-rich, where everybody has information, but it's disconnected and managed on disparate tools and spreadsheets, to being insight-driven, leveraging things like data and analytics to help us make better decisions. And instead of being perfect, taking months to craft requirements only to have them change once you go into execution. It's better to be fast and learn and pivot and change to keep up with a changing environment. And you also have to move from being very departmentally focused to being connected, where everyone in the organization is working together. No longer do we have siloed project teams, but product teams that are cross-functional and cross-organizational. On the left, we see the levers that help an organization understand how well they can respond to the drivers of a customer-obsessed operating model. So if you think about it, these elements of customer-led, insights-driven, fast, they influence what an organization wants to do. On the right, the levers here of structure, culture, talent, metrics, processes, and technology, what they signify is the ability of an organization to manage and deliver in a customer-obsessed operating model. Do we have the right structures or organizations in place? Do we have the culture that supports excuse me, experimentation, fail fast, agile delivery practices? Do we have the talent and skills in-house to be able to do that? Are we measuring the right things that help us know that we're delivering? A very sensitive mouse finger today. Are we measuring the right things to let us know that we're delivering correctly? Do our processes support this fail fast mentality? And do we have the technology that actually helps support our ability to deliver? As we start looking at making ourselves be more customer-centric in the way that we operate, in the way that we plan and deliver, we soon recognize that traditional planning processes don't support agility. And many of you, this might look very, very familiar to you. Traditional planning processes are very much project-oriented. They really follow the line of budget, plan, execute. Organization goes through its annual planning process, which for most companies takes 3 months, an average of 3 months. Mission statement doesn't really change from year to year. Your company doesn't completely change their vision, but things may alter the mission statement a bit from year to year. But you come out with they come out with the list of annual initiatives. They're often vague, don't contain any sort of or rarely contain any sort of indicators to know what targets you're shooting for. All they're meant to do is provide top-down guidance. Those initiatives get floated out over the organization, and every department goes off and they develop their wish list of projects. They then hand those project proposals over to IT, ask IT to estimate those projects. IT spends weeks estimating those projects, and then you go into the budget wars. Because when you hand the total cost over to executive leadership, they choke and say, we can't do all of this. So you go through the budget wars to come up with a negotiated list of priorities. Those priorities are handed over based upon department. They're executed in silos. Costs are tracked and they're reported upon at an administrative level. We are managing to cost. We're managing to our estimated costs, managing to our estimated schedule. But outcomes and benefits aren't tracked and reported. Most organizations, when you go back, PMI has repeatedly surveyed companies over the years for this, and they've reported consistently that only about half of companies responding to these surveys realize about 50 to 56% of their strategic plans. So they're leaving almost half of their plans and budgets on the table, and if you don't use it, you lose it. So how can you build your strategic portfolio management maturity? One of the ways to do that is to have an understanding of where you are in terms of your current portfolio management maturity, whether it's project management portfolio management maturity, or if you've made the jump to strategic portfolio management maturity. At Forrester, we have an assessment that I believe the folks that keyed in have made available to everyone. And we assess on these four competencies. We assess on structure, the vision, ownership, alignment, and allocated budgets. We also assess on measurement, customer-focused demand management, benefits realization, customer analytic-based decision-making. In other words, are you using customer data? Not just market data, but customer feedback like Net Promoter Scores, customer sat, adoption rates to help in your decision-making. Also, internal analytics decision-making. Yes, you have your schedule and budget performance, but also the effectiveness of your team, velocity over time, quality over time, and using them to help make decisions in what you're going to invest in and what you're going to be focusing on. And finally, governance, program and product organizations. So how within structure do we move from project-based to product-based? And then moving to how we move from project-based funding to product and value stream-based funding, making that funding not be IT-only exercise, but having line of business really own their funding and seeing how that is impacting organizational structures and governance structures, and also having line of business accountability where today, if a project fails, it's always IT's fault. In the world of a customer-obsessed operating model, you really have to take accountability. If you want to be agile and you want to form product teams, the line of business needs to have that accountability to really drive the change that's necessary to achieve portfolio management maturity. So let's dive into these competencies. We'll start with structure, and we're going to expand structure and measurement competencies. Execs in a mature organization, execs have articulated and communicated the corporate vision. It's amazing to me how many organizations I speak to that don't have a clear understanding of their corporate mission. They might only look at it as an employee once a year, and they may look at it not in conjunction with their strategic plan. But in a mature organization, that message is articulated, it's communicated, and it's understood and looked and referred to consistently to help guide strategy formation and delivery. The company has implemented a planning structure that allows you to assess applications, technology, and investments to measure alignment. Product and program investments are aligned with strategy. They're not departmentally based. And people and money are adequately assigned based upon alignment. So before we move on, let's talk about, and let's take the time to execute a poll about benchmarking your structure.
So Margo talked about the assessment. Let's just take a quick little assessment as to where you are in your structure. Here are some of the indicators that tell you whether or not you are higher on the maturity scale or lower on the maturity scale when it comes to structure. So if everyone could take a moment to just agree, disagree, or say somewhere in the middle for each of these three, if you have executive support of the vision for a customer-obsessed operating model. If your organization has a planning organization dedicated to the enrichment and betterment of apps and technologies. And third, if your organization has aligned goals and strategically allocated budgets. And again, we can't see the individual responses, so feel free to be truthful here. It just starts with benchmarking where you're at, so that way you can find out where you're going. And this is the first structure portion of the maturity model. So we'll give everyone just a couple minutes to answer those. And we can show the results. Some totals here. So it looks like the middle one, planning organization dedicated to the enrichment and betterment, is kind of where people are landing the most on the disagree side. It looks like the executive.
What's interesting is that they're not. They disagree that they are dedicated to the enrichment and betterment of apps and technologies. That tells me that they're very still very project oriented versus looking at product and how we can deliver and align to value. And, you know, I think that it's not unusual that folks aren't sure, that, you know, it's very close, that between agree and not sure. You know, I think everybody has a good sense, or at least a good idea of what their company's vision is from a very high level, but may not be as aware as what it means on a day-to-day basis. Okay. So yeah, I think that what that tells me is, and is not surprising, you know, to wrap up on the survey, is that most folks are starting on this journey. And when we have interviewed companies that are going through digital and agile transformation, and it really moved not just their planning and delivery practices, but even fully have transformed their funding practices, we're only talking about 10 to 12% of the folks that we have surveyed and interviewed have made that full transformation. So rest assured, you are in the vast majority of companies that are, you know, starting on this journey and have done something, but are, you know, still finding their way through. So let's move on to structure and measurement competencies. When it comes to structure, we're having a little, I actually have a typo here on my slide under structure. We'll correct these slides before we send them back out, but I see I have a typo here. What is actually under structure is that teams are formed around, no, actually I jumped on the wrong slide. So pardon me, folks. I hit the wrong key and thought I was on the wrong slide. So taking that from the survey, let's erase the last 30 seconds and we talk about on the survey that folks are making their, you know, they're beginning their journey. So one of the steps that we see within structure is that we said that investments and organizations are aligned around the strategy and vision, and, you know, they're forming product teams, and the investments are aligned with strategy. So how do you start putting that in place? And one of the ways that organizations are doing that is moving from annual planning with optional review, periodic review throughout the year, to continuous planning. And within that continuous planning process, in order to support that, they're doing a number of different things. They are beginning to form product teams. They are also looking at not basing their planning on projects, but basing their planning on themes and investment strategies. So the organization moves from output-based planning, which is what you have in budget, plan, do, and project-based planning, because you're delivering a set of projects or outputs, to outcomes, where they're identifying strategic outcomes that they want to achieve. Because what that does is that sets direction, but allows autonomy for the organization. That strategic outcome then provides the information to develop the strategic roadmap by establishing 12 to 18-month rolling budgets. Because when you move from project-based funding to product-based funding, you are covering and supporting the life cycle of a product, not just for bringing a budget together, building a project. Once that project's deployed, you close that budget and then you disperse the product team. You're now recognizing that this has a life cycle, and that life cycle spans, is over the course of a year. It spans beyond a year. So using that guidance, they develop business strategies and strategic architecture to provide top-down business and technology guidance to autonomous teams that are determining what work they're going to be doing in order to achieve those strategic outcomes. And they're planning that work based upon the capacity of their teams. So the teams are prioritizing the portfolio and funding and placing the funding allocations for that portfolio. The teams are identifying the product solution and architecture within the guidance of overall enterprise architecture. So when you have team-based funding, you can then, instead of funding individual-based projects, you are funding a value stream that's made up of products and capabilities that need to be enhanced to support those products. They're delivered by autonomous product teams, and they're providing feedback on a regular basis, not just an annual basis, but on a regular cadence, establishing 2 to 4 week sprints, providing perhaps monthly feedback to the portfolio so that they can measure outcomes and adjust funding for the teams. And then that allows them to measure value that's being delivered back to the organization in terms of leading and lagging indicators, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, that then allows you to adjust the strategic roadmap. So that is a change in how things are funded and how things are actually delivered. So you're moving from budget, plan, do to plan, fund, deliver. So let's talk about the aligned measures of this planning. The purpose is to track objectives and their outcomes, bringing focus to efforts to make measurable contributions. So part of the challenge is I need an application because I want to reduce processing time. Well, reduce processing time by how much? I need to have this project because it's going to get me 150% ROI. Well, how does that ROI come in? What form does that ROI come in? How are you going to measure that ROI? The measures that organizations are using today to help them be much more visible and how they're going to achieve the objectives of their portfolios are coming in the form of objectives and key results. So they are defining and tracking objectives and their outcomes, bringing focus to those measurable contributions, highly visible. Everybody in the organization has OKRs for which they're accountable. It's powerful at every level of the organization, and you can use it as a powerful tool for continuous improvement. It's an effective goal system. It improves on the SMART goal format, which we'll go into in a moment. They're specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relative, and they're timely. Objectives and key results puts it into a time box to show that you can achieve it. You break up goals and objectives into smaller steps that allow you to measure your portfolio iteratively. It cascades alignment and traceability so that when you are making an investment, you can see that every initiative being funded traces back to that objective. You set quarterly goals and you measure them in 12 check-ins, at least 12 check-ins. It's really as much as you need. You set stretch goals and you work on collective organizational wisdom. The goal is to get 70% of bottom-up alignment so that you have improved alignment overall for the folks that are working on initiatives. Organizations today, again, as I said, are well under 50% alignment. If you can get to 70%, that is significant improvement. And they're transparent and accountable. So let's give you an example of what an OKR looks like. An objective that would be set at a corporate level is improving market presence through new products. Each organization has a role in helping the company achieve that objective. Sales, their key result that would help achieve that objective is expanding sales in current markets by 25%. Product management would be by launching a new mobile product in 2018 or now 2019. Marketing, increase marketing campaigns per advertiser. Could be Facebook, Instagram, Google, whatever social media that you're using, increasing those marketing campaigns from 2 campaigns per quarter to 5 campaigns per quarter. So they all each have their marching orders, measurable marching orders that are going to help the organization achieve that objective. From that, they can then determine a KPI that can be tracked throughout the progress throughout the measurable time box to help them know whether they are on track or not. So for sales, it would be it could be number of net new customers in existing markets. For product management, percentage of successfully delivered features in each sprint to the marketplace. For marketing, it could be percentage of lead to close conversions. Now, mind you, that marketing KPI is also in alignment with the sales KPI. So you can see how well organizations are working together to help them achieve that investment in that portfolio. So you have your structure, you're forming product teams, you are aligning by strategy, you are funding by strategy, you are identifying clear and transparent measures that are going to help you know that you're on the right path. You also need to expand excuse me, process and governance competencies. Under process, you're going to be expanding portfolio management processes that support not just projects, but looking at things in terms of products and programs and services that support those products. So you're looking at work is work and all the work that goes into supporting that investment, not breaking it into two buckets of project and maintenance. We're going to look to optimize practices that supports continuous planning with the ability to pivot based on customer or market conditions. If you only review your portfolio once a year and you never look at trade-offs, it's going to be very difficult if you do have to make a pivot to turn the ship and redirect funding and resources. You're also going to be looking now at resource capacity that supports agile, hybrid, and traditional planning practices. So in other words, you're looking at throughput and not utilization. How can I allocate people to work and remove the barriers to help them work more effectively? And optimizing governance and process in this area comes with a recognition that you really can't do this with mail and spreadsheets. You need to create an ecosystem of planning and delivery tools to support end-to-end lifecycle management. So before we start on processes, let's jump into another survey.
So here again, we're just going to benchmark the process category. And here are some indicators to kind of give you an idea of where you land in the maturity model when it comes to process. So the first one is our organization optimizes portfolio management for quick and proactive responsive analysis. So again, just hit agree, not sure, or disagree on there. Pretty simple. Our organization has portfolio management automation in place to optimize and monitor performance. Another indicator on how you stack up against the process category. The third element is our organization understands the importance of agility when it comes to resource management and adapting to changing demands. Just 3 quick indicators to see where you're at on the process side of your maturity. So we'll just give everyone a minute to respond there. Hopefully we'll let Margo's voice take a break for a minute. And then we'll close it down. Perfect. So again, we see maybe the process side of things has a little bit more lower of the maturity model. Interesting to see some of the results here.
That is really interesting. For the top, if you're in a project-based organization, it is going to be difficult to turn the ship. You lock down resources, you lock down funding, you're unable to pivot, if you need to. So that's not surprising at all. And if you're not building out the ecosystem and you're really doing this with, the number one project management tool, the number one portfolio management tool is still Excel. So organizations that are slow to realize the benefits of automation, you will have this. You will have numbers like these. And it's good and heartening to see that they're recognizing the importance of agility Now, this next series of slides, let's talk about what you need to do to put this in place to help you move forward.
We can do one more quick one on governance first, if you want, Margo.
Oh, okay. My apologies on this. The slides jumped on me. Go ahead. Let's do that.
So we'll do a quick governance benchmark before we move forward on how to improve. Another couple areas on how to benchmark your governance. Our organization has embraced the transition from functional groups to product teams to optimize delivery. One indicator on how your governance is doing: our organization uses product-based or value stream-based funding instead of annual project-based funding. If you're looking more toward the annual side, you'd land on the disagree side there. Number 3, our organization has clear visibility of delivery, empowering leaders to invest in technology when they need to. So again, a third area of the governance side of things to see how you stand on the maturity aspect of governance. So if you're listening in, we appreciate your participation in the poll. Again, we cannot see individual responses. We're just going to look at the totals to glean some insights as to where our audience stands right now and which parts might be more important for you. So we'll close that down. Perfect. So governance seems to be another one that has a little bit more on the disagree side.
Absolutely. What we can see, some insight here of what we've found in our research is functional groups to product teams. That's because of traditional finance. Really difficult to make that because of all the cross-charging, charge back and show back and it's something that is, comes out of traditional service-based and manufacturing-based financial practices that most organizations use. And when you look at technology companies, they employ a different financial model, and that's what allows them to transition to product-based funding. So not surprising to see that at all. Glad to see it's only at 60%. I've seen it much higher. Product or value stream-based funding, that again, due to project-based funding, it's very difficult for organizations to see that. But there is the ability to do that when you are actually moving toward teams, and we can talk a little bit more about that. We will actually. Clear visibility is if you don't automate, it's becoming you have to do it. You can't get away with doing this without automation. So let's move ahead. I want to make sure we leave some time for questions. So how do you start building strategic portfolio management maturity? One of the areas is to really start thinking about how does a product company think? And by forming product teams and looking at how product teams come together is, at a discussion point level is one of the first ways to do that. And you're looking to solve a burning business problem, to not take an entire completely jump in approach, but start doing it at an iterative level. And, that can help you get from the beginning level to the intermediate level. And then as you learn from the product teams that you form, you can then begin to expand those product teams and move up the maturity scale to become a primarily product or program-based company. So one is to start having the conversation around product teams. Number 2 is then to start actually organizing by product teams, putting product teams around your organization, your core team of developers, product owners, testers, Scrum Master, Kanban leader, whatever delivery approach you're going to use. Then recognizing that that's your core team, they are dedicated to a product. The other bands around this core team are resources that are needed to support those core teams that may not need to be there every day, but when they're there, they are allocated 100% for the duration of the time they're needed on that sprint. And then the third band out are the folks whose expectations that you need to manage as your executive sponsor security person who might not be listed here, but is definitely involved, release train engineer. And recognize that while you have core teams, you are still probably going to be working in a shared services environment. That doesn't prevent you from having product teams. When you have product teams, you have them dedicated to those products that they are supporting, but recognize that you have shared services that are going to be allocated, as I said, to a sprint and need to be there for the length of the sprint that they are supporting. What's very important here is that you're now focusing on throughput instead of allocation. So you need to focus on sequencing allocations of a resource. And that's where the portfolio comes into play. You have to be focusing from a top-down perspective, looking at what we need from a capacity perspective, and using that bottom-up guidance to drive allocations. And the PMO can provide great support in this area by looking at portfolio dependency management, by working directly with your Epic teams or your product teams, whatever you want to call them, and the DevOps teams on when the release management needs to be brought into play, and the shared services organizations. They identify the dependencies and work with the product teams to determine that you might not need Margo in sprint 1 and 2, but I need Margo in sprint 3 and 4. Therefore, product team B, you can have Margo in sprint 1 and 2 because she needs to be free. And that way, Margo can focus on throughput and not task switching back and forth between projects. You also recognize that continuous portfolio management becomes key. It's not something you do as a reporting, rear view mirror reporting mechanism once a month or once a quarter. You're really looking at it as an ongoing exercise. And the elements of portfolio management don't change. You still have demand management, prioritization, capacity management, performance and execution. But the underlying activities of demand management, which is funnel and assessment, you're looking and capturing demand as it comes in real time. They're performing assessments. So portfolio team is looking to make sure that that alignment information is there. The business value is articulated for OKRs. You've captured the cost and risk. You're still prioritizing and looking at capacity, but now you're doing it on a monthly basis instead of a quarterly or biannual basis. So you're looking at trade-off analysis. Again, making sure that all investments align with what is our strategy, what is our business model from based upon our alignment strategies. What capabilities have to be enhanced, because we're not going to just fund individual projects. We're going to look at all the end-to-end work that's going to support that product. And do we have the capacity and risk? That then allows you to inform the product teams how they can manage their backlog. And then you can monitor via continuous feedback the KPIs value of that include value, cost, quality, risk. And then finally, in performance and execution, what organizations forget about in waterfall has to become an integral part, and that is retrospectives, measuring outcome, measuring performance to know where you need to improve going forward. That allows you to look at business model, investments, that understand the product and the capabilities that it supports, allows you to start funding value streams. That if you're going to fund a mobile banking program, you have to recognize that you may have to invest in applications that support account management and account processing, as well as that mobile app itself. That helps you fund a value stream. And what that continuous portfolio cadence does is it allows you to support that trade-off analysis, because you are feeding it on a continuous basis. Your portfolio management tools hold the high-level plans that set the basis for OKRs and provide you that top-down portfolio by quarter to inform what work can be done. I can't see what I can do over an entire year, but I can see what I could do over a quarter and plan for that. Your resources and your plans are housed in your portfolio management tools. So you can provide guidance to the teams that are managing their sprints or their Kanban boards in Agile project management tools. By linking these tools together via integration, you create a continuous execution and performance feedback loop that gives you transparency to be able to manage those OKRs. And that allows you, that visibility allows you to transform your budget to product-oriented planning. So instead of looking at individual departments, you're now looking at an IT budget that will never go away because that supports all of your core corporate tooling and your platform, moving it from perhaps an on-premise database or a private cloud to a public cloud. That will always stay in place, but what will happen is you'll see the shift of budget percentage go to the product teams, where we call MVP, which is minimal viable product, that is owned by product teams. And we're also seeing organizations split out a shared budget between IT and product teams to say, let's innovate, let's make some bets to see where the product is going to be going. And if our bets pay off, we'll then fund it as a product. And that MVP funding will take over that individual project funding and be measured on the delivered value against their goals. So you start thinking more like, if you're a bank, you're not just a bank, you're a tech services company that delivers banking services. So I'm going to close it up with recommendations. We're leaving about 8 minutes for questions. The realization is you can't do this all in one. You've got to pick that product that's going to work for you and transform for value. Recognize that you need to capture everything in your portfolio and identify what's going to help you make that transformation. As a portfolio, you don't want to look just at budgets and FTEs. You need to value organizations, individuals, and interactions over process fidelity. That makes your portfolio alive. You're looking at what organizations can deliver the value and how can I support those organizations most effectively. And use the portfolio as your communication vehicle to help you celebrate wins and learn from losses. You can't do this without tools. Make the portfolio tool work for you to be the lens into your company's ability to transform to being a digital agile organization. So thanks. I'd like to turn it back over for questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Margo. While you're entering your questions into that chat box, just a quick introduction to Keyed-In for those of you that aren't familiar. Keyed-In is a provides portfolio management solutions for organizations. Couple things just to note about us. We have a high focus on customer success. Our services and support team gets high marks for their customer success and highly, highly rated. Another area of focus for us is benefits realization and the ability to reinvest up to 20% of portfolio and speed of reporting by 50%. Some of the things our customers have told us time and time again that they are able to achieve from using Keyed-In for their portfolio management solutions. And again, our lasting partnership with our customers is definitely our focus area as a company. So building that lasting partnership, finding customers that are a good fit, not just people that have a problem to solve quick, but really looking for that long-term partnership with our customers. So again, quick intro to Keyed-In and while you are thinking about it, a quick polling question final poll question. If you'd like to see a demonstration of Keyed-In, learn more about Keyed-In and how we help you solve some of those problems that Margo talked about and touched on throughout the presentation, how to build some of that strategic portfolio management maturity through better reporting, through better data and analytics, increased governance. We are happy to show you some of that. Just let us know if you would like to talk to one of our friendly representatives and we will be in touch with you. If now's not a good time, but you want to learn something maybe later, let us know that too. Or if you're not interested, we would like to know. And with that, we'll move into the questions and see if there's anything that has come through. Oh, Margo, somebody wants to see your email address really fast. If you want to just go back a couple to your contact information. I believe it's just your first initial last name at Forrester. Yes, there it is. There was a comment that came through during the presentation that Margo might be able to speak to. It's difficult to get the organization to conform to process improvement and utilize tools. I'm not sure if you have any comments or light you want to shed on that area. I believe you are on mute, Margo. There you go.
Me now?
Yes, there you are. Excellent. So the comment was, it's difficult to get the organization to conform to process improvement and utilize the tools. I wasn't sure if you had any comments from your area on best practices in order to do that.
Yes, absolutely. That's OKRs is one of the great ways of getting organizations to start following process improvements without even realizing that they're doing it. So, excuse me, when I work with companies and get them to start tackling something like an OKR, I have them use it in the framework of a project, especially if you have not necessarily made the jump from project funding to product funding. Use it in the framework of a project. So what is the objective of the project? Because very often, if you look at traditional business cases, there's no outcome listed there. There are a lot of outputs, but no outcomes. So if you use the OKRs in the form of a project to say this is the measurement structure for the project, that's a good way to start slipping in OKRs. So you identify what the objective is for the project, what are the key results that have to be in place to know that the project is successful, and then you can start decomposing that to the teams into, okay, what is the BA, what are the BAs responsible for? What are the developers responsible, so forth and so on. And then you actually build out an entire outcome-based structure that you can track over time that actually even helps folks that if you're tracking late on a schedule or a budget, for example, you can point to a key result and say, why are we not catching up on that? Maybe there's an external issue that's preventing us from tracking that. That gives you a whole wealth of information that is team-based. It's not individual-based, so there's no pointing fingers, and that helps you really start driving that change in a way that is not outwardly painful to the organization.
Perfect. If there's any other questions, go ahead and enter them into the chat box. Again, we thank everyone for joining today and for your time and attention today. Really excellent presentation and topic. It seemed to really hit a lot of notes with people, so really appreciate everyone's participation today. It looks like there's no more questions from the audience. So again, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you so much, Margo, for going through that. That was really helpful, really great stuff, presentation today. And again, we will be sending slides and recording to everybody that is on the line today. So keep a lookout for that if you would like to view it again, or if you'd like to forward on to anybody else, you can do so.